Okay, well, Daniel, welcome back to the Noob Spirit podcast. We're hooking into settings for GoPro today, get into a little bit of the editing weeds, and we're just battling over who's doing the front man because the video for this is going to go on your YouTube channel.
It will.
And the audio is going to get stripped out and put on the Noob Spirit podcast, so welcome along, man.
Thank you for having me again.
All good. So you were a super gentleman as usual and helped me out with some settings for my GoPro after I got some really good advice from a guy in America. However, his sort of experiences at a lot of the producing television and GoPros used as supporting footage. So there was a couple of points of differentiation. So, but shout out to Dan Walsh. But let's hook into some of your recommendations. Is that cool?
Yeah, definitely. Let's do it.
Okay, so a bit of background. Me and Turbo got these new GoPro Hero 7s and the black model. So I've got out for 2 dives now and tried 2 different lots of settings. The second lot was with your recommendations, but the first big recommendation you had was switching the region to
PAL.
Australia. Yeah.
So PAL's used basically everywhere apart from the States and I think Japan, and maybe there's like one other country like in South America or something. That's about it. But yeah.
Is this like driving on the left versus driving on the right?
Well, they drive on the right in Europe as well as the States, so it doesn't quite cross over. But
and China too, and there's 1.4 billion there, so maybe we should all drive on the right. I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of a bit like a metric and imperial system. So I think originally from a film sort of era, you would, for just sort of ease of calculation, let's just say everything was recorded at 24 frames per second. And in reality, that can sometimes be 23.976 frames per second, which gets really confusing when you've got lots of different footage. But with a PAL system, it's all based off a 25 frames per second time base. So all the stuff you'll see on TV or a DVD in a PAL region is delivered at 25 frames per second, whereas in a NTSC, I always get NTSC and NTFS confused. One's a Windows file format and one's the other opposite to PAL. And so I use for work as well. I use all PAL settings. It's all 25 frames a second, and it makes it really easy for your time base to, do slow motion and your calculations for, say you want 2 times slow motion, you'd have 50 frames per second. You want 4 times slow motion, you'd do 100 frames per second. It just makes it a lot easier than 23.976 and then 47 point something or 96 frames per second. So yeah, it's kind of like metric and imperial. Metric system is the go.
It makes sense, like when you're trying to sync up music and audio files and you've got these annoying sort of differing frame rates and stuff like that because it's not precise. I just pulled the GoPro out because I thought maybe I could just show guys where to set the region, because it's actually not in the main settings page. Where you
it's not that obvious. It's not that obvious. No, it took me a while to get around the GoPro 7. But by far the best one I've used so far is the GoPro 7 out of all.
So it's in preferences, yeah?
I couldn't tell you. Mine's sitting up on the shelf up there.
I've got it here, and then you go into regional, and then it's just video format PAL. There you go.
Yeah. So that's the first thing I do.
And that's super important because you get that. And it is NTSC. You're right.
NTSC, yeah.
Gee, so you got good memory.
Apparently.
Okay, and so PAL will give us a standardized frame rate, and that's
when you import it into your editing program. I've imported, say, a lot of other people's GoPro footage, and they dump it at the end of a trip, and I've got some frame rates that are sort of 59 point something frames per second because their camera's in NTSC, and then when you try to mix that with your stuff, the editing program has to drop frames somewhere to make it uniform. So you sort of can get a bit of it's very subtle, but you get a bit of a jittery sort of look. So you'll sometimes, because if you've got 30 frames and you're sticking that into 25 frames and you export at 25 frames, you got to dump those 5 frames somewhere. So it may not necessarily throw those frames away in a sort of lineal fashion.
Righto.
So yeah, sometimes you get like just stuff that just looks a bit crap, looks a bit weird. It doesn't look very smooth and sort of natural. So yeah, that's a big thing.
Okay.
But if you're editing in a 24 frames per second time base, do whatever you want wherever you want. But for me personally, and most of professional work that I do is all PAL. So.
All right, hang on. I'm just setting up. Sorry, I'm just setting up like a little mini stand for my camera so I can record some of this little GoPro action. I'm very professional here.
That's all right.
Not used to film at all, to be honest. Did you see my YouTube video, by the way, the accessories one? What did you think?
I did. I started watching that when I was on a plane back from Dublin. I had to go into airplane mode, so I didn't get through the whole thing. But I really liked your grey cyc background. That was quite nice.
Okay. I've just got this wall behind me. It seems to be a good background. I don't know why. It's unusual because normally people use a lighter coloured wall or whatever. I don't know.
Just change it up, yeah. Why not?
You like having the depth of field with something in the background like you've got right now.
Yeah, like I've got my kitchen and some bottles of gin, Campari. Been getting into the Negronis of late, coming into summer. So, yeah. But yeah, it depends what you look. Yeah, we shot a film at work recently that was all on our studio white cyc. So you just see the person in a completely blown out white background. So it depends on sort of what you're looking for. Because my flat's pretty boring with white walls, I try and create a bit of depth in here just to give it something a bit interesting.
And with a GoPro camera, can you get that blurry background look that you get out of a DSLR or mirrorless?
Can you? I don't know what the maximum aperture is on a GoPro, but the problem is that the wider your lens, the less apparent the depth of field look is. So even if you're shooting, say so for instance, what I'm shooting now is probably about, I think it's maybe 35 mil, a full frame equivalent. So when you talk about focal lengths, you're talking about full frame equivalent. So like old 35 mil film cameras. So when someone says a 24 mil lens, it's the start of the wide angle style lenses. Yep. For a GoPro, I think they're equivalent of could be down as far down as 12 or 14 mil, which is turbo wide. So as you sort of get wider like this, that plane of focus is sort of, it's not as apparent. So say if you shoot something on like a telephoto lens, like a 70 mil or a 200 mil lens, like you can compress the crap out of the background. You wouldn't know what's in the back of this, but my camera would have to be ages away. So with a GoPro, it's probably not really, I've never actually seen depth of field displayed with a GoPro. Just because it's too wide, really. Like a drone as well, they're quite wide. You never really get that depth of field, or you have to be really close. If you're right up close to the camera, maybe. But just because it's so wide.
One thing I like about your YouTube channel is the storytelling aspect, and you'll stop and talk in other locations apart from just where you're spearfishing, whether it's on the boat or it's on the shoreline or driving down the road or whatever. All of these extra shots are really good for storytelling, which funnily enough, a lot of spearos are actually starting to learn. That's not just
heaps of guys out there.
Yeah, it's not just the kill shot montages anymore. There's I watched a 15-minute video of yours the other day. I really enjoyed it. It was about Norway, and it was just a shore dive underneath a bridge, and you literally shot one fish in 15 minutes. And
in Denmark the other day, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Denmark. Sorry, I didn't even pay attention to where you were. But
I may not have mentioned.
I was thinking Norway's way further away than a 4-hour drive. But anyway. But I just love the aspect that I was thoroughly entertained for 15 minutes, and really you shot one fish in it, and there was nothing wrong with that.
I worked for that fish, Isaac. I really did.
I saw you buggered up a couple on the way.
Yeah, I did. I wasn't quite on the ball. I don't know. Maybe I know that day I just wasn't really. I was kind of a bit hesitant. You know how sometimes you're just not feeling that cold-blooded. Sometimes, and you just don't want to kill stuff. I was just a bit like, if I see a nice cod, I'll shoot it. If I don't, whatever. But I think
you weren't targeting the pollock or what were the other fish that were schooling?
They were coalfish, or I think the Nordic name is sei, which is like if you're reading it in English, it would be save. But it's a coalfish, so that those things get massive. They get like 20 kilos. They look a bit different to the pollock because they have a white line down the middle of them, a more pronounced white line. Just leaving them alone.
But what I was getting at was like, breaking up your film with these shots where you maybe tell a bit of a story or provide some dynamic elements for your videos. They're really cool, and I think you do it really effectively. How would you advise other guys to do it if they can't get this cool depth of field look out of their GoPro? What's some other ideas for shots?
I don't necessarily think you have to have a very cinematic look as such, where you've got depth of field in your shots. Where most of the time, if like I'm doing like a vlog as such, where I'm talking to camera, I just use my my Panasonic mirrorless camera. Not because of the cinematic look. Well, it does produce a nice image, but it's also because I can put a decent microphone on it and get some good audio out of it as well. I think that's quite an overlooked thing. Good sound. But I would say just,
this is a problem with the GoPro too. Like the native sound you're getting out of the GoPro is actually pretty good when you're in a tight room. Even when you're out, it's not so bad. They've improved a lot. Yeah. But, I can't even plug in my lapel mic into it.
No, without an adapter,
Yeah, so if guys want to record external sound, what would be your recommendations to them?
I probably wouldn't do it on a GoPro, to be honest, because most of the time you're going to be sitting it inside your housing, and you're not going to really want to put a hole in your waterproof housing. They are waterproof to 10 meters, and I tried this out. I thought, this is great. I'll have great sound, because like you say, the sound is great outside of, in a small room or a car or something. But when you go diving with them, I went scalloping, and because it's quite shallow where I'm in England, and all the stuff that I listened back to, water sits inside the little grill of the speakers and completely muffles it. So you have to get to the surface and shake the crap out of your head, or shake the camera, or blow the water off it, so you can actually get some decent sound out of the microphones on it, which kind of defeats the purpose of it, of just going, I can jump in. So back to sort of what I was saying about the story. I don't use a big camera to. Well, for me personally, because professionally I am a cinematographer and editor professionally, so I do like to have something that's aesthetically pleasing, with that depth of field and kind of like a nice cinematic feel to it. But you don't necessarily need that to tell a good story. For instance, there's a YouTube channel from a guy, I think he's from Redland Bay, called Nick Fry, and he makes everything on a GoPro, and this guy's got 500,000 YouTube subscribers. His last couple of videos have been trending on the Australian YouTube page, and it's all on a GoPro, and it's not necessarily big. Don't get me wrong, he's very creative with the way he places his GoPro, and he'll like walk past it, and he'll drive a boat 1 kilometer away, then come back and get his GoPro to keep filming. So he does put a lot of effort in, but you don't necessarily need to have crazy expensive equipment to do that. I think you just have to get a bit, sort of think outside the box maybe about how you can show something in a way that other people don't see it, or that everyone thinks to see it. So if I say, cool, I'm going to, I don't know, here's, for instance, one way I showed, what's a good example of this? Driving over a bridge. That like you say in Denmark, I drove over that bridge. Was
that a time lapse shot you had on there?
I used the hyperlapse feature on the GoPro 7, which is super cool. Just because I thought, I'm never going to be able to get a shot. You're not allowed to pull over on that bridge. And I wanted to show guys, and you're not allowed to park under those pylons either, because the police will come, and you can't really fly a drone around that area because of terrorism. And it's it's a super impressive structure, and there's no other way to get a shot of it. So I thought, well, I'm really impressed by this thing every time I drive over it for work. So I thought, try and use some other features. So I don't necessarily think you need very expensive equipment. I just think you might need to get a bit more creative about how you shoot something to captivate an audience. And I think that's kind of what I've tried to do on my videos, is to show the stuff that you and I take for granted when we go diving. You see it all the time, I see it all the time, but my dad doesn't see that because he doesn't go diving like I do, or my wife doesn't see that, or my friends don't see that, or most of the people in the world don't see that. And so I think it's really easy to overlook the things that you find mundane and boring. Like putting on a wetsuit. I did a video about scalloping, and I took a mate who'd never really done any diving before, an English guy. And I did a little bit at the start about him putting on an open cell wetsuit. And for you and I, it's like, cool, we're going diving, we're getting in a wetsuit. For him, he's like, I am going to die and suffocate in this thing. I think just showing stuff that, having an eye for things that you think are mundane, but other people may not necessarily see, is a really good way to convey your story.
So thinking about it from the perspective of of people that are going to watch it that necessarily don't have any background in spearfishing yeah, cool. I like that idea. Well, you mentioned drones. You're filming with a drone as well. What have you got? And is that a bit of a learning curve?
I bought a drone about 2 years ago. I bought a Mavic Air, so it's a foldable portable drone. It's probably only about this big once it's folded up. Really cool. I contemplated getting like a bigger drone. A mate was going to send me his from Australia to use because he just wasn't using a big Phantom, and it's got a bit massive backpack. And I thought, you know what, if I go on holiday, I'm never going to take that with me because there's my carry-on allowance. Or if I go skiing, I'm not going to go up the Alps with that thing. So I just throw this in my backpack. And I know there's better drones with better cameras and stuff, but for drones, for me, I like to use them quite sparingly to either use an establishing shot or show something that I can't show with a camera otherwise, because you can get caught up in using drones because they look awesome. They do. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. There's just such a great perspective. But when you sort of crutch on, if that's your crutch to have sweet drone footage, it doesn't. Your film gets a bit boring. Like I probably would rarely 100%. Use more than 15 seconds of a drone shot before cutting to a different angle, just because it's cool, but it can get a bit boring. But at the same time, it's really great for illustrating things. I did a film in Malta when I was there, and there's this really cool cliffs and this staircase that was carved out into it. There was no way I could show that properly without a camera, without a drone. So I used it a bit there, but using a drone, it's good fun. It's a bit hectic flying on the water. There's a few tips if you're going to fly a drone on a boat. Turn obstacle avoidance off, because when you try and bring it back to the boat, you have to catch it. You can't land it on a boat. Well, not in Australia anyway, because it's just there's too much rock. You'll never land a drone onto a boat. I've done it once in the Mediterranean in a sheltered place with no wind on like a 7-meter boat. You can drop it on, but most of 99% of the time you're catching it. So you want the obstacle avoidance off, because when you've got that alarm going beep 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 that I'm running out of battery and I'm going to return to home. That's the other thing. You can't press return to home on a drone while you're in a boat, because it'll return to where it took off from, which your boat is never going to be in the exact same spot, so it'll just land itself in the water if the battery's dead.
Nice.
So, I would say turn obstacle avoidance off, which is a bit, risky, but you just got to sort of keep drones in a line of sight, like you do all the time when you're flying them. You should really try and keep them in a line of sight.
Well, according to the law, but you've got these drones. Some of them have got like a 6-kilometer radius.
They're out of control. Yeah,
for sure.
Mine doesn't have that much range. But I got quite good at flying a drone off a boat. I had a documentary in Timor-Leste just before Christmas, actually, where I was blue whales and other cetaceans, and I was just flying off the back of an ex-tuna fishing boat, and they never wanted to stop. So every time I have to try and fly a drone, try and catch it off the back of the boat while it's doing about 8 knots. So you get good at it really quick if you just practice.
You talked about these establishing shots, and I kind of know what you mean, but obviously you're using that to sort of set the scene, particularly at the beginning of a sequence. One of the ways the guys seem to do it is with a big pan, which is, like a slow turn, and then you get to see sort of the whole scene unfold. Another way you're sort of doing it is sort of like you're pulling out to a greater and greater sort of bird's eye view position.
Distance. Yeah.
Are either of those shots hard to capture?
Pan's extremely easy. It's just one move on your stick to pan left or right. Excuse the sirens. Someone's getting murdered around here.
It does sound like London. But are they? You're saying left to right, but is that like real nice, smooth, buttery footage? Have you got a gimbal in your unit?
Most drones you'll get will have a gimbal in them, and what I have done actually on my drone is you can turn the sensitivity down of the sticks, so it's kind of like a Cartesian plane. If you look at the X and Y, and then you have a parabola of your sensitivity. So right at the start, when you initially touch it, it's not very sensitive, but when you go sort of full stick as such, it will be the sensitivity. Obviously it knows when you want to go fast because you're pushing it right to the end, but if you just touch it a little bit, it'll go nice and smooth. So you can adjust those in the sensitivity through the app. So if you've seen some people's footage where they're flying along, and then you see this sort of like this real quick sort of jilt to the side, and it doesn't look very sort of slow and cinematic, which is what you're going for. I rarely try and put those shots in my films just because I pride myself on not doing that. But it looks a bit amateurish, I guess, when you sort of just see this, the gimbal going everywhere, the camera panning everywhere. So I'd say just like slow and steady shots, and it's just practice, to be honest. And I think the other thing with drones is because they are so used. Like everyone's got one. It seems, every bum and his mum's got a drone these days. So I think combining these panning moves, so you tilt the camera up and down, that's great to reveal something. But if you're elevating the drone at the same time and then panning up, you get a more dynamic shot. So you're combining several of the two or three of these moves. So there's an orbit that you can do, which is kind of like a rotate on an arc where you have something as a point of interest. So imagine you're sort of like going around a lighthouse and you keep the lighthouse at the point of interest. What's quite cool is if you're looking at the ground, you're doing that orbit and then you tilt the camera up at the same time to reveal the lighthouse as you're orbiting around it. So when you can combine several of these moves, which takes a lot of practice, and I've got so much footage of me ballsing up these shots. I'm like, damn it, fly back, reset to try and get something like that. I think that sort of makes your drone footage stand out a little bit more. If that's what you want, if you want to heavily feature on it, I think you've got to make it a bit more dynamic than just here's the coast, here's the water, here's my boat, etc. You got to sort of maybe do something with it. The other thing I really like to do, really inspired by a YouTuber filmmaker guy called Sam Calder. He's Canadian, and he just flies his drones through just ridiculous things, like through gaps. If you fly drones close to things, they look absolutely amazing. So I've got a few cool shots where I've flown through gaps in trees and it just looks ridiculous. So that sort of stuff is really going to get people's attention because as I said, it just seems everyone's got a drone these days. So if you want to stand
do
out,
something different with it.
Yeah. And I did that. I flew my drone through a car in Denmark when I was there one time because the video I shot there was knife fishing, so it wasn't that exciting. So I thought I'll spice it up a bit. I had 2 shots and just took the windows down on the rental car and then flew the drone through it. I'm like, that was cool, but I jerked it a little bit at the start. Cars. Yeah. So then I tried it again and crashed it, and then decided that was enough. Clipped a prop and down it went. So that's the thing with drones. If you fly them over water, kiss it goodbye, because touch wood, I've never lost one, but I've come very close a lot of times to losing it.
We recorded an episode on drones. It was pretty much just because I was curious about them, so I just went down the rabbit hole a little bit. Yeah. And so there's an episode way back with and I talked to Carly and another guy who runs a school in America. So I learned a lot about it. And I got an FPV, which is like full manual controls.
Yeah, they're awesome. You can do some cool stuff.
I was trying to fly it in like 20, 25 knots. And this thing's just like, weighs nothing. Crashed it into a tree several times. So Turbo did invent the hashtag Drongo with a drone, based pretty much on my footage.
Drongo is actually a bird I found out a couple of years ago after my. I didn't know what a drongo was. It's a bird.
Obviously not an intelligent bird.
No, probably not.
Probably somewhere near like the turkey hierarchy of intelligence,
or the great Mauritian dodo. Is it Mauritius or Seychelles at the dodos? Right, I think it was Mauritius.
I can't remember, but they're gone anyway, aren't they?
They're very gone.
Yeah, they were tasty. All right, hey, let's dig back into GoPro. So,
yep, sorry, we digress.
No, it was perfect. I love a bit of a awkward sort of trip off into the weeds, and drones was well worth sort of talking about, I think, in some of the storytelling aspects. So I'm just going to go back into settings here.
Yep.
And so first on our list is resolution. So obviously, you've recommended filming in 2.7K as opposed to everything else. Why is that?
The reason why I film in 2.7K is because for several reasons. The data rate of the footage goes up significantly on 2.7K versus 1080. And so when I say 2.7K, the K is just standing for 1,000, and it's talking about pixels. So it's 2,700 pixels wide with a 16:9 aspect ratio, same as sort of like full HD, which is your 1080, which is 1920 by 1080. So when you get into the Ks, they tend to go horizontally, not vertically, which is a bit strange. But 2.7K. So when you say 4K, it's not. It say it's 4,000 pixels wide, but when you say 1080, it's 1080 tall and 1920 wide. If you know what I mean. So it gets a bit confusing.
Yeah, righto. Okay.
So
cool. I got that. That's the first time I actually have understood that.
the pixels and all that sort of stuff. So it basically starts at HD, which is your 720p as they call it, which is 1280 by 720. Full HD, 1920 by 1080, and then 2.7 is a bit of an odd sort of size, but because it's got a lot more, it's a bigger image, so there is more information there, and all the videos that I deliver online are in full HD, so 1920 by 1080. So when you've got 2.7K, you have the option of reframing as well. So say you've got a A3 bit of paper is your 2.7K, and you're trying to squeeze it down into your A4 piece of paper, which is your 1080. So you can move it around and not lose any quality if you sort of get what I mean. You can reframe it.
And you can crop out as well. You can
crop in, or you can squash that down, and the way that I don't know the exact technical terms, but basically by like downsampling 2.7K to 1080, you get a crisper image than just having 1080 because of the way it bins pixels and that sort of stuff. So people will say, you can film in 4K, but you don't notice it because you watch it on a full HD TV. Well, you can 100% tell the difference between 4K that's been squashed down to 1080 versus something that was shot at 1080 and delivered at 1080. So that downsampling does provide a lot of extra I guess maybe not sharpness is the right word, but it's just a nicer looking image. It's just it is a better looking image.
It's a crisper looking image. Why aren't we filming in 4K then?
For me, 4K, the advantages of 4K over the 2.7K aren't really that great for me because one, it takes up a lot more space on your memory card. It also chews a lot more battery to film to record with on your GoPro, and as you can see, they got a battery the size of a piece of chocolate. It's you kind of want to preserve these things.
Flat out, I think I might be getting like 70 minutes out of a battery filming 2.7K, maybe a little bit more.
No, it's not a lot, is it? And the worst part of the day is changing your battery because you're gonna have salty hands. You got to take some time out. You got to stick your GoPro in the sun, and I don't know. Everyone's been there where they change the battery, and then suddenly, I've got a water droplet now. My housing's foggy, and you just want to avoid it if you can.
That's what I did, 100%. And you're meant to be being boaty too normally, like when you.
And then
so you're paying attention to the divers. You got rolling seas.
You're tipping out everyone's fresh drinking water on your hands and on the housing because you don't want to get salt in there. And everyone's like, where's all the water? And you're like, I had to change my battery. So that's one of the reasons. The 4K does look really tasty. It comes off the 7s, but it eats a lot of the resources, so your battery and your memory cards as well, and there's nothing worse than getting to the end of the day, happy hour, last 2 hours of the day, and no battery on your GoPro and you shoot something epic. That sucks. That really does suck.
Okay, so 2.7K has given us enough resolution and a nice tight picture for when we're editing these awesome kill montages. What about frame rates? Which is sort of in the same section, like what do we got for options and frame rates? So at 2.7K you can shoot it apparently 100 frames per second. Have you tried that?
I've never tried 100 frames per second on the 2.7K because I don't have a stylistic need for the 100 frames a second. So the reason why you'd shoot 100 frames per second if you're delivering everything in 25 frames per second is to get 4 times slow motion. And the problem with filming that is, one, it takes up more memory because you're taking 4 times as many frames per second. So it's a much larger file, and it's heavier on your computer to process. And the other reason is your image quality suffers the higher the frame rate goes, unless you're talking like a really high-end, £50,000 cinema camera, which is just a beast. Yeah, right. But we're talking GoPros; they're the size of a matchbox. So, say for instance, if you shoot on your GoPro at 25 frames per second, and just these figures are made up, but let's say your data rate is you get 100 megabits per second from your 25 frames. So therefore, each frame has 4 megabits allocated to each frame. If you shoot at 50 frames a second, you halve that. If you shoot at 100 frames, you have a quarter of that. So you got 25% of the quality. So I've actually noticed it. Someone gave me some footage that was shot in 2.7K 100 frames a second, and it doesn't look that great compared to the stuff that I shot at 50 frames a second. So you get you get a lot more noise, you get a lot more grain. It's not very sharp. If you're out in super bright conditions, like on a boat, it might be okay. Because also when you shoot in a higher frame rate, you let less light into the sensor. So if you're trying to shoot 100 frames a second at the start of the day, at the end of the day, your image is going to look like poo. The good balance Sorry, yep, go.
Yeah, no, good. No, it's all good points. I was just going to say, so you like 50 as opposed to 25. That gives you everything you need for shots. Can you do super slow-mos and all the rest of it? I mean...
Without using additional software, you can't really do more than 2 times slow motion with 50 frames if I'm delivering in 25 frames. The 50 I find good because with 25 frames a second, you're going to get a really great looking image out of your camera, but it's not as flexible in post where you can have some options to slow a shot down if you need it to fit a music track, or if you want to emphasize, if something came out of the corner of your eye and you want to sort of just slow that down a touch. You can't do that with 25 frames a second because you've got no more frames. There's nothing else to show apart from the 25 that's there. And I found for my editing, 50's a really good balance. I don't often use slow mo, but sometimes I will to show something really epic. Looks cool in slow motion, but it's not turbo slow mo.
I was just gonna say, like, until I changed my regional settings to PAL, I didn't even get the 50 frames per second rate option. It gave me 30, 60, and 25, I believe.
I think it'll give you 24, 30, 120, 60, and then maybe 240 as well in 1080 as well.
So PAL changed all that as well. So that was I thought that was interesting.
That's essentially what it does. It changes the frame rates. It's something to do with like the way they broadcast television and that sort of stuff. I'm probably getting that completely wrong, but if you want to look into the history of PAL versus NTSC, there is a rhyme and reason behind it. I avoid 30 frames a second. I really don't like the aesthetic of it personally, and I don't.
Okay, cool. We'll just follow along on sort of what I've got here on my GoPro screen, and the next one is field of view, which the options are linear or wide. Wide always seems to make everything seem further away and smaller, and is that kind of the main thing with it?
So underwater, that's corrected, so you don't get that fisheye effect. So I think for me, from what I understand of a GoPro, if you shoot in the 1080 mode, I think you get narrow, medium, wide, and super wide. So it's a fixed lens, so that actual field of view isn't actually optically changing; it's digitally changing. So when I think the native like wide angle lens that comes with the GoPro that's on it is the wide setting. So if you change that to linear, what it does is it'll digitally take out the optical distortion. So when you digitally alter the image in camera, you're getting less of a quality of it. If you get what I mean. So it's kind of like with the field of view thing. There was one on the 1080 I think is like narrow. If you change it to narrow, it doesn't actually change anything optically on the lens. It just digitally crops it and says, cool, this is your view now, and we'll blow it up. And if you put them side by side, they don't look it's chalk and cheese when you go like a narrow view versus a wide. I think the linear and the wide are aren't too bad. The linear view is not the worst of them, but like if you go to narrow or medium, they look like dirt to me.
It's only given me 2 options. It's only given me linear and wide now.
I think if you change your resolution to 1080, you might get narrow as well. And I know on my GoPro 4 you get all 3 options on 2.7K. So it could also be to do with the stabilization as well when you've got the HyperSmooth on the 7.
Which is a good segue, which is next on the list.
good segue. Yes.
So you're definitely using the auto stabilization.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. It's absolutely ridiculous compared to.
I've heard some guys say that underwater you don't really need it. You clearly think otherwise.
If you're shooting on your head as a one-man band, as I often are, I would definitely use it on your head. I can notice it. I shot something the other day in Denmark. I had, because the audio on the 7 is better than the 4, I stuck the 4 on my head, and then I wanted to talk to camera with a selfie stick with my 7. So
nice. I did see how you did that. I thought that was pretty...
mate, you should see me. I'm like Action Man. I got GoPros tucked down my belt, torches on here, belt reels, and car keys everywhere, and burying my clothes in rocks. And yeah, it's
every time I do a podcast, and some legends like, just keep it simple, man. You don't need bloody dive watches and all this other bullshit. You're sitting there going, but I've got 6 GoPros and 18 torches, 3 dive watches, and.
Hey, it takes a fair bit of stuff to. I'm not trying to like blow my own trumpet, but like for a video that I make, I tend to. Some days it's just not worth doing it unless I'm going to do it properly for me.
100%.
I don't want to make something half-assed. So I've got a mirrorless camera. I've got 2 GoPros. I'll have a drone, and then sometimes I might even have an underwater rig as well. And then you've got somebody else's camera. So I just got a project that I'm editing now. I've got 7 different cameras to cut from. Yeah, it's just it gets a bit out of control. But yeah, I do use the HyperSmooth. Back to that part that we're deviating from. I notice it particularly when you're walking or in a boat. Yeah, it's just chalk and cheese. There's no stabilization on the 4. I think the 5s and 6s are okay, but the 7s was just revolutionary for me.
There's a couple of comparison videos on YouTube, like guys skating and just like walking shots, like what you're talking about. And they've got the smooth or the stability function on maybe it's even the GoPro 6 and versus the GoPro 7. The GoPro 7, this is like one of the huge advances I think that this camera made over the previous gens.
Yeah, it's spot on. Yeah. It's really good because that's the big issue, because you've got such a small camera. It's influenced heavily by movement. And back to your point about when people say you don't need it underwater, if you're using a tray or something with 2 handles where you're just filming with the camera, that may, you probably don't need it, to be honest. But if you're filming on your head or something like that, where you've got a lot of movement, which most guys are filming on their head these days, I would say, versus gun cams. I'm not a big fan of gun cam myself, unless it's attached to a big dog tooth. That's really sick when it takes off. But yeah, I think it's a really valuable bit to have in there, and it crops in on the image. I think it was like 11%. So if you shoot on wide and it crops in on 11% digitally for the HyperSmooth stabilization, for me, I've really found it super cool. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, nice. Low light. So that's automatically off anyway, isn't it? It's not available, that feature. We're getting into go. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. The low light, what that does is it reduces the shutter speed, so you get a lot of motion blur. So when you get down on the bottom and you move your head side to side, you get that sort of drunken look that you see in the movies, say like Requiem from a Dream, when someone's all tripped out on and that sort of stuff. So when you have a slow shutter speed, you're exposing each frame a longer period of time, so you get that hectic motion blur with the low light. You let more light in, but you get more motion blur, and I've ruined a few things by having that on.
Yeah, well, when we're using the current settings the way they are so far, it's NA anyway. Can't even bloody touch it. The next thing, I guess, is Protune.
Yes.
So tell us a bit about Protune.
Protune is if you want to access any features that you'd have on a normal camera outside of the sort of box standard hit record and go and have fun for a holiday user for a GoPro. But if you want to edit something, I would highly recommend using the GoPro Protune features. You get access to stuff like white balance, shutter speed, max and minimum ISO, and that sort of stuff. So I use that all the time.
Okay, cool. All right, well, that one was an easy one. What about shutter?
Is that within Protune, the shutter speed?
No, it's just to the right of it. It's,
okay. Shutter speed I set to auto. You can
There's only 2 options there, so it's 1/50 or auto. So
yeah, so that like 1/50th of a second is trying to follow the 180 degree rule of cinematic motion blur. So yeah, you could follow that, but if you're on a bright sunny day and you have your shutter set to that, your image will be blown out. From experience, I nearly ruined all the footage I took in Denmark for a competition one time. If you go back and watch that video, all my whites, all my sky is blown out and just completely white. It's just lucky that it's dark and grey there, so that helps.
So the shutter and the low light are essentially the same function. It's just how long the aperture's staying open. Is that right?
How long it's exposing each frame, basically. So yeah. So if you have your exposure triangle for a digital camera, is your ISO, your aperture, and your shutter speed. I believe the aperture is fixed on a GoPro, so you can't alter that, which is how wide your iris in your lens is going to let more or less light in. That also affects your depth of field as well. And the ISO, you can bump that up or down. That introduces digital noise into the thing. The higher ISO is the more light, more sensitive the sensor gets, but it creates noise. And the shutter speed is the third thing in that. So
just important off topic here. I just noticed that you're in London in a t-shirt, and I'm in Brisbane, and I've got like a hoodie on and a beanie.
It's tropical here, mate. In the summer, it's not too bad. It's still light outside. Actually, I've just got the curtains shut. So
the next sort of thing I got into, and I took your recommendations on this because I think I started off with the EV comp at minus 0.5, and I changed it the last time to just 0. What is the EV comp value? What is it?
It's basically an exposure value compensation. So a GoPro, with the settings you plug into it, say you put an auto shutter on, it will say it will have mathematically calculated values programmed into it that says this is what an exposed image should look like. So when I say a properly exposed image, I'd say none of the highlights blown out, so none of the highlights or your skies, blown out to white, and none of your blacks completely crushed where you can't see any information in the black. So a properly exposed image is somewhere in between that. And GoPro will say, yep, this is what an exposed image looks like, and that'll be EV0. So it'll be 0 on the exposure meter. If you drop that down, you want a slightly darker image. So say you're shooting maybe in the snow, in the Alps or something like that, where you got a lot of reflections and it's going to get confused with all the highlights and that sort of stuff because the snow's super bright. You might want to drop that down just so you're not accidentally blowing out your highlights, because that looks also really amateur as well when you have an image that's either blown out or doesn't look so bad when the blacks are crushed. But
So when you're filming there in like Denmark or one of these overcast type countries where maybe the water's a little bit dirty and you're under a bridge, would you set that even higher? Would you go like 0.5 or 1?
I've never actually tried, to be honest. I sort of leave it at 0 just because I know what it comes out at.
But you've got these mad skills in post where you can brighten footage and bring out the colours and all the rest of it. What about for the rest of us hillbillies? Like, is that something that we could maybe use?
I've never experimented with it that much, but one thing I would say is it's easier to capture things in camera than try and fix it in post all the time. And the footage you get off a GoPro, it's not extremely high quality in the big scheme of things. So there's only so far you can push it in post before it breaks. And when I say breaks, it falls apart. You look at something, you go, oh man, you've got big blocks in your blues and that sort of stuff underwater. You've tried to put too much contrast in or something. Excuse me. There's only so much you can do. So I haven't honestly experimented that much with my 7 because I've just sort of stuck with what I know, but I don't often change that because I think the GoPro does a pretty good job of exposing as is.
Okay, so we're leaving EV comp on 0. White balance is next.
I had a massive fail with this in Australia. I set it to 5500K, which white balance is measured in Kelvin, which is the
temperature.
The mathematical temperature. Absolute 0, negative, minus 279.8 degrees or something is 0 degrees Kelvin. Absolute 0, where electrons stop moving, the world falls apart, can never be achieved, etc. It's a theoretical number of 0 degrees Kelvin. Basically.
Yep, I understand.
Yeah, for those that don't. So if you're shooting outside, normally you would set your white balance to around 5500K, which is a good balance. When I did this on my GoPro 4, Looks great underwater, looks great on the surface. And when I did this on my 7, for some reason underwater, everything just went turbo blue, and I ruined a good day's diving. Actually, I was really pissed off about it, and I couldn't bring that back in post. It was ruined. So I found the native white balance on the 7s is the best. And the reason why I use a specific white balance versus just going for full auto is, if you've ever watched a video where someone's diving along the bottom, they'll be looking at the reef, everything looks green and stuff, and then they look up to the sky, and then suddenly, oh, the water's like aqua blue or cobalt blue. It's the camera seeing what it thinks white should look like underwater, so it looks really bad, and it's really a pain in the butt to fix in post when you get shifting white balance. I've got a really, I'll send it to you. I've got a really great example in the Tweed River about 2 months ago, where it's gone from just brown, green to blue in the space of about 10 seconds trying to find out what the white balance is. So I set it to native after a bit of experimentation, and that seems to give a pretty good overall white balance on the bottom and on the surface.
Okay, awesome. All right. So native for white balance. Next, we got the ISO minimum and maximum values.
I don't push the ISO higher than 400 on a GoPro, and the minimum is at 100. I think the native ISO or the baseline ISO is 100. And for any camera, if you can get that as close to the baseline ISO, it's going to get the cleanest image possible. So you don't introduce noise. Anything above 400 kind of looks pretty turd. You can sort of denoise things in post, but takes a lot of processing power, and it's easier not to.
So 100 to 400 seems simple, easy. Let's stick with that. Sharpness, which is something I've played around with a little bit. I left it on low, but I don't have the editing suite as yet to do all this stuff in post that guys talk about.
I never really sharpen in post, to be honest. I think sharpness on an image can kind of make it look a bit too digital, which I don't really like. So I leave sharpness, I think I do leave it on low as well, but I tend not to sharpen it in post. I don't know, you know when you sometimes see like videos in the promo GoPro videos, they're really crisp, they're really saturated, they're really sharp, and they look like a GoPro. That's not an aesthetic that I'm particularly fond of myself. Some people love it. It's harder to match that with another camera. So most of the settings that I use on my GoPro is to try and match it as best I can with other cameras. So it looks sort of consistent-ish. Doesn't always happen.
Like I say, for a Philistine like me, it's pretty hard. If I concentrate and I want to pay attention to the technical aspects of a film, then it's something I'll notice. But generally, if the story's good enough and I'm caught up in the narrative, I'm not even looking at the comparison between cameras. And I guess that's what you're trying to do. So you're having the desired effect on us hillbillies.
Oh, thank you. I'm just trying to make it so you're not distracted by something that's drastically changing in the shot. Is kind of what I'm going for. Yeah.
I upped my sharpness last time to medium, and I think I prefer that over the low setting.
Okay.
But that was also based on your recommendation.
Did I say medium? Did I? That's what I said in my email. Oops. Oh dear. Maybe I do set it on medium.
It's okay. It's you probably gave me a dud serve, but now that we're doing it with others, you feel like a moral obligation to give them a better story. So, thanks for shafting me, Daniel.
Metaphorically.
Well, hopefully, jeepers. GoPro color, the color mode. What do we got here? Obviously, GoPro digitally enhancing it. Is that what the story is?
It's just the GoPro look, that saturated sort of look, and there's a flat profile as well. If you want to have a bit more flexibility in post, you can set it to flat. I've done a mix of flat and GoPro color, because when you shoot flat, it's all well and good to go, I'm going to shoot it flat and I'm going to color grade it really nicely. But because like I said before, it's not the highest quality video codec and video file that comes out of these things, so you can only push it so far. So if you're really trying to make it punchy and stuff like that, if you want like a nice saturated look, stick it on GoPro color. For me, if I'm specifically trying to do it and match it with other cameras, for instance, not even diving but for work purposes, for a POV shot and that sort of stuff, I will shoot it on flat to try and match other cameras. Just depends on how much work you want to do in the edit suite, really.
POV shot. You're giving us some lingo here. Obviously, that's a third perspective, is it?
A point of view So what you see, what the user sees. So like a POV shot. If someone's, we did a film at work where a safety video where it was the POV from a person, running up a ladder and jumping over barriers, and then they died in the film. Just trying to illustrate things from a different perspective.
Get that video game, and obviously a lot of GoPro films are shot in this mode because we're all using the head strap or a mask cam.
Yes.
Which I wanted to quickly ask you about after, but so we've got the color profile. What about raw audio, mics, and PT settings? They're the last three settings on this. It seems like we raw audio. What are we doing with that?
Raw audio it just records a separate WAV file, a .wav file for you if you want to do something in post with it. I was doing that for a bit, but I never ended up linking them, and I didn't find a massive difference. So the audio's not amazing off it to start with, so I probably wouldn't. I haven't messed around with the audio settings too much, to be honest, on the 7s.
Okay. And if you go into the mics, there's some sort of allowance for the wind by the looks of it. Have you tried playing around with that?
I haven't tried with the wind reduction because I've got it in the housing most of the time, so it's not a massive factor. If you want to stop wind noise, stick a little bit of fluffy material on top of your microphone. That works the same thing. Bit of fur or something like that. Bit of fake moustache from a party shop, mate. That'll stop wind noise on your microphones as well. Yeah,
like you were talking about the boom mic, or what's another word for it?
The shotgun mic.
Shotgun mic.
They put a dead cat on it is the industry term.
Yeah, that's the term.
The dead cat.
We ran with that for a little while with a Rode one, and it was still shit. Like the lapel mics outperformed it generally.
There is a massive difference. Yeah. Lapel mics are good because you can hide them under a t-shirt and get them out of the wind as well if you mic them up correctly. But it's not that practical in a wetsuit on a boat. So shotgun on the top of the camera is normally what I do on that. And I have had problems with wind noise before, but not much you can do about that.
Proximity to mic seems like a huge one.
Huge.
So you're using a directional mic with that boom? Is that?
Yeah, I've got a pretty spenny Sennheiser mic I just borrowed from work today.
Shit. And it's all out of shot too. You're so professional. You make me feel just inadequate, really.
It's right there for people watching, so you'll be able to hear this in the me tapping on that in the recording. Just I guess depends on how much you want to spend on stuff. You could spend £5,000 on a shotgun mic if you want to, but it's not necessary.
Sound does make a huge difference to quality for so much stuff. Like there's that old industry cliche, or you can have bad video, but you can never have bad audio. But I don't know. I think
people don't watch it. Hey, Blair Witch Project is a prime example of that. The video is shaky and crap, and audio's fine. Audio's really great sound design there, a lot of suspense and stuff like that. So that it worked for that. And
that was a bloody good film. That was ahead of its time. That was really clever, that film.
Yeah.
But we're starting to show our age, I think, Dan.
We are, yes, in the plus 30 club.
Notice how I put myself in your group there, because I'm like, I'm 38 shortly. It's terrible. Editing. Let's hook into editing, man. So you introduced me to this profound idea that is really cool for a guy like me on some shitty old PCs. Well, they're not shitty. They get the job done, but like when you're starting to edit these huge files, man, it's a lot of work, and you need a modern system.
You do, yeah. Especially with the GoPro, footage is not the most edit friendly. It's because it's so compressed to try and fit so much information into a small thing. So the codec for it, so the way it unpacks in an editing suite is really crap. If you change that to a different codec, so it's the codec that a GoPro records in is called H.264, or sometimes it's 265 on the newer GoPros. It's a really, really compressed container, but it makes a nice file, like a really good compromise between file size and quality, but it's hard to edit. So what you're talking about, that we talked about, was called proxying those files. So you can basically make a duplicate of that file, in a really small, low resolution thing, edit everything with that because it doesn't require much processing power. If a file's, a tenth of the size, you can edit it on a potato if you want, and it'll still work.
Yeah.
And then basically when you go to export, you just, there's one click of a button in certain programs and you can export the original files out and done. So I do have to edit sometimes like that.
I love this idea. I feel like I needed to read what you wrote to me 3 times though, so I'm just going to give it back to you in my version. So
sure.
You've got this compressed version with these high quality files, like obviously we're filming in 2.7K.
Yeah.
So the proxy creates another mirrored version in a lower resolution.
Yeah.
You dump 6 or 8 clips in, put your music in, your audio, whatever. You make all these edits, make it into a video, and then when you render that file at the end, it changes all the original files.
Yeah, it's just a click of a button. You'll see it on your playback. So I had some stuff at work that we shot on an Aria Mirror, which is a high-end cinema camera. I think we shot it at a ridiculous high bitrate 4K. Could not play it back at all in my editing suite. Then I proxied it overnight, let it all render out, because it takes time to make that file into a smaller one. So you just let that run overnight, and then you come back and you click the proxy button on your editing program. Yeah, you can play around and edit it. Then as soon as you click that button to toggle proxies off, everything stops again. So yeah, it's a really handy technique. Yeah.
Is this unique to Adobe though?
I think the technique. I don't know if is it called offline editing? I think I may be getting that confused with something else, but I think there is a technique that was used a lot sort of early 2000s and that sort of stuff by people in a similar situation that didn't have access to a beefy machine, and you would do that. So there is a way. You can't do it I'm sure you can do it in Final Cut Pro. I'm sure you'd have to be able to do it in Avid Media Composer as well. I think it's just something that people don't really think of. It takes a little bit of... Actually, it doesn't take that much effort in Premiere Pro. I just select all the files, right-click, create proxy, go have a beer and come back and it's done.
Okay, so Final Cut Pro is this Mac one. You mentioned Avid. We've talked about Premiere Pro, and the other one I think is Vegas that's worth considering maybe.
DaVinci Resolve as well?
DaVinci Resolve. I haven't had a look at it.
It's made by a company called Blackmagic, so they make a line of cinema cameras, and it's a software that comes with their cameras. You can edit anything on it, but if you get the free version, you can edit up to 1080, and it used to be more of a color grading program, like it's an industry standard color grading program, but now that they've introduced all the editing features, you can cut a whole feature on it if you wanted to, and it's free, but up to 1080. So, yeah.
And is that good for pros and cons? Hang on, let's just get it. Like the pricing models on all of these, like Premiere Pro seems great, but unless you want to get a pirate version, which seems harder and harder these days, by the way.
Wouldn't know.
Nah, me either. Like I would definitely pay for it. Just the way I roll. But if we're doing it, we get in trouble. We get caught. Like it's just not worth it.
No.
But the like Australian dollars for Premiere Pro is like $330 for 1 year.
Yeah, I think I've been paying for the whole suite for the last 5 years, and originally it was $600, and then I got to the UK about 4 years ago, and they wanted £600, and I was like, that's $1,200 at the time. I was like, you guys are pricks because it doesn't cost you any more to distribute in a different country. I know there's different VAT and GST in different countries, but that's just mugging people off. So it's annoying, but what can you do? So yeah, it's at the moment, I think the last payment that they took out of my Australian account was about $850 for the whole suite for a year. So yeah, it's punchy, but you always get the latest up-to-date version. You've got access to all the other programs, which inevitably you'll probably end up using if you get seriously into it. So
well, that's what I was thinking, but then you need a machine to run it as well, and both of my machines are starting to look a bit tired, so I'm going to do a custom desktop setup. I'm sick of laptops too though, so it's time.
It's time. Yeah, I use a desktop at work, and it is much nicer to have a big 24-inch 4K screen than my little MacBook Pro that I've got here. But it does the job.
Yeah, for sure it does. And when you get used to the the Mac setup. It's good for creatives, I think, but I just hate being pigeonholed into this monopoly and not having access to the free world. I just dislike their business model, so I steer clear of Apple. But
hey, that's the beauty of Adobe as well. It's multi-platform. We have in our office we have PC users and Mac users, and I can hand off a project to them on the same hard drive. If you format your hard drives in the right format, you can go cross-platform. Not a problem. You can't do that with Final Cut Pro. It's Mac only. The good thing about Final Cut though is you can buy it outright. You can just go cool, buy it on the App Store. You've got it. It's done.
How much is it roundabout?
Maybe like $300 or $400, I think.
It's sort of similar to Vegas then.
Yeah, I've never used Vegas actually, but I think Avid Media Composer is probably. I think a lot more Hollywood films get cut on that. That's kind of like an industry sort of standard, and then Premiere's sort of coming in a bit more popular.
The reason I bring up Vegas is because Jose DeBasa, he was doing all the Spearheads films. Yeah, and like they made some cool videos, and I like definitely. I like his color grading and the way he puts it together. I thought he did a mad job, and so I mean that proves that the program is definitely, you can use it. So.
All three of those main programs, Vegas, Premiere Pro, Final Cut, all the color grading stuff's really quite similar with a few little, this might have a little bit of a color matching between shot things or some little extra feature, but the only sort of program that is, leaps and bounds ahead or different is DaVinci Resolve, which is a node-based system, which is a bit complicated to get your head around. Even I don't understand it fully that much, but I wouldn't say the advantages are that much better for one or the other, except that multi-platform for Adobe
Premiere,
for Premiere, and the proxies are really easy if that's something that's a massive concern to you. I'm sure you can do it on Final Cut and the others, but that's all I'd say.
Someone gave me a premium copy of Movavi, and so I've been using that, which is like, I grew up hacking together films on like Windows Movie Maker.
Movie Maker,
Yeah, and so like the Movavi, it feels quite similar to use. I mean, I've used editing software for audio and stuff before, so it wasn't too many leaps. It was quite easy. Like within, I think, if my computer wasn't so slow, I could have probably put that video together in an hour or an hour and a half. But unfortunately, the rendering part just takes a lot of time. So.
Yeah, you do get to that point where if you get decent enough at editing that your machine will limit you. Often at the start, you like spend half your time looking on YouTube on how to do something first before you work out how to do it. So the machine speed's not of utmost importance when you're first starting out, I think.
Cool. All right. So we've given a couple of good sort of programs there for people to consider. Now, you definitely use the Adobe Premiere Suite. What are the specific apps you're using for your films? So Premiere Pro is doing the bulk of your
cutting and editing, cutting together. If I've got to do any visual effects or some really fixing up some really bad mistakes I've made while filming, I'll use Adobe After Effects. So that's like a compositing program. It's layer-based. It's also got like a timeline, but it's more like Photoshop. But think of it as Photoshop for video. Is kind of the thing I would describe it as. You can do some ridiculous things in that. You can, like a small example of the last video I did in Denmark, I put some graffiti on the side of a bridge that wasn't there just because I wanted to do it, and just wrote a stupid little message on there. Just, can you imagine if this was actually real graffiti? Spider-Man must have put it here or something. Might have got missed by a few people, but it was just, I don't know, just something fun to play around with. I'm trying to use it a lot more just to get better at it. I use that.
You seem like you're a bit of a curious person. You like having to play around with different stuff. Do you think that's an attribute that's really good in a filmmaker or a creative type, like because you're always just playing around, like it's your sandbox kind of thing?
I do go through stages where I just go, I want to try and do something creatively. I guess in Australia where I had a shed, I would build things physically, and moving to the UK, I've been quite limited on space, and I don't have that ability to do that. So now I sort of outwork that in a different way. So that's one thing.
I was just wondering, if I send you a whole lot of footage of myself, can you obviously like make my shoulders just a bit broader, just a little bit trimmer in the middle?
That sort of stuff. Stills is very easy. For video, it's a lot harder work to do that sort of stuff.
Okay.
And I'm not sort of anywhere near a level of VFX that I could make you look like Jason Momoa. Sorry.
Damn it. I was hoping just to get sort of like a competitive channel to Brody called Old Bloods, and just
Old Bloods.
And I just sort of, just swim around in a Speedo, and you obviously digitally enhance, everything. No, but like you watched my accessories vid. We talked about. You talked a little bit about having a scratch disc. What is that?
A scratch disc.
My understanding of it was like, obviously you use an external for a lot of your footage, but then you drag it into your actual.
Oh, right, yeah. So an editing drive. Yeah. Are we able to pause so I can take a piss?
Sure, man.
Cool. Sorry.
100%. Nah, all good.
I think a bit of personality is what people like, and I think that's like one reason why some of my stuff gets watched a lot is because people can relate to not everything being perfect. Like that halibut video I did. Everyone, I didn't shoot a fish for a 6-day trip, and I think everyone was just like, "Yeah, that's me. I know what that's like." So I think that sort of resonated with a lot of people sucking, and I was just like,
100%.
You know what? That was me.
The other thing is pulling the ego out of it. You know what I mean? Not being afraid to just be yourself. Like so many dickheads just like it's just there's not much ego. Like we shoot fish. Yeah. Do you need to be any more? Emphasize. I don't know. I just think it's a hard sport, man. There's heaps of like not many people can do it competently. So when you can break down some of the barriers for people, explain them, and show your own struggles, I think that's cool.
Yeah, that's one thing I've tried to do is just try and make it feel like whatever I'm doing, someone else could do themselves. And I think that's really important to sort of, I don't know, like you might be, I like snowboarding. I got into snowboarding over here a bit. I don't really I'll watch 5 minutes of the Red Bull big mountain challenges, but I don't relate to that in any way where I go, oh, that gets me fired up to go snowboarding and go, yeah, that's super sick. But I don't know, I think there's a thing about, this really high-end elite sort of spearfishing that kind of puts people off because it's like, oh, I could never do that. You know what? I had a video that I shot down at Brighton. I got on a train and shot mullet, and I was frothing, and people loved it because they're like, I can do this. This guy's getting stoked on this. Why shouldn't I? So I've definitely changed my attitudes a lot since being here, and sort of being influenced a lot by some of the other guys here that are just diving because they want to dive, not because they want to. Yeah. I don't know. Man,
I think there's a huge proportion of spearos that like spearfishing just for what it is, without any of the accolades from competition or world records or any of the other stuff. I mean, all that stuff can be cool. I get it. I meet some of the dudes, and they're just as passionate. But you can get off on just shooting your dinner and eating it.
And I've had to learn to do that because there might not be that many trophy fish here. Don't get me wrong, I love going to try and shoot a halibut and that sort of stuff because it's a massive, wicked, awesome fish. But I think I had a video in Malta where I shot one 800-gram brim, mate, on a wedding anniversary trip, and I think a lot of people resonated, going, "Oh man, if I was on my wedding anniversary, I'd be stoked to shoot a crappy little fish as well." Like, it wasn't crappy; it was like my first one, but
I saw some of your stuff with the Italian guys. I haven't watched all your vids. I tend to get, you know what it's like. You get oversaturated with stuff as well.
Yeah, it's a minefield. Yeah, there's just so much stuff, and you don't watch everything through and through, which is a bit of a shame. But
I don't even listen to my own shit. No, I do to an extent. You have to because you want to get better and improve your craft. Yeah. But it's definitely like a time and energy balance, if you want to have any sort of life as well.
Yeah, definitely. Do you want to actually go spear? Do you want to go spearfishing, or do you want to watch spearfishing?
Exactly.
Yeah. It's kind of like that. I like people that watch gaming streams. Would you rather play the game, or would you rather watch someone play the game? It's kind of it's a weird sort of juxtaposition, really, isn't it? Like, sort of watching spearfishing videos. Unless
there's a balance though, like,
for sure,
because you learn. If you spend a little bit of time watching others and you're curious, and you apply that, and you think, oh, I might give that a go. I mean, that's how you expand your horizons and you learn. You keep getting better.
That Justin Lee axiom, actually, that podcast got me so fired up on life. I love that. That was just
stealing arrows.
Oh, it's just I think that the part about not being a yeah but guy just really like smacked me in the face, because I've been that guy so many times, and it's, you know, not led me down a good path. And I was just like, you know what, I'm really going to try and adopt that. And going to Denmark the other day, you know, listening to locals, I'm like, yeah, but, you know, when I was there, I, you know, shot fish here. Like, oh yeah, they're going to be in holes. I'm like, what? Cod aren't going to be in holes, mate. They're dumb as dog crap. They just sat on the bottom. You know what? Everyone was in a hole. You sort of just don't want to disregard that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have brought a torch. Otherwise, I would have left it at home.
It's a cognitive trap, you know. I think it's part of the ego. But the other thing is it's like when you spend a lot of time and energy learning something, using your observation skills, putting the time in, you do tend to start to disregard what other people say. Even
100%.
It doesn't even matter who it comes from. No. It's just, but yeah, staying curious and, you know, being able to put your opinions to the side. It's it is something he's good at. I like his attitude too. He's a cool dude.
It was such a good podcast. I was listening to that. I think I was like driving from one side of Denmark to the other in the car, and I was just like, yes, I just needed to hear it. So yeah, I was really appreciative of if nothing else, of your efforts over the last 100 podcasts. That was a good one.
Yeah, 103. I did a cracker last night. Hey, let's hook back into editing a little bit.
Sorry, we digress.
No, that's fine. I love the side stuff.
We're talking about editing drives.
This idea of a scratch disc, or what did you call it?
I just call it my edit drive, a drive I edit from.
So you've got so let's just talk a little bit about your PC setup. You've got a SSD that you're running all your main operating system from, and your
apps,
main programs
and all that sort of stuff. Yep, inside my laptop. Yep.
Okay, and then you're putting on the files that you're using in the video onto that drive, or
I don't put them on the SSD on the inside. It is much faster and easy to edit from, but like anything, it's got a certain amount of times it can be written onto before it starts to fail. So editing does read and write a lot onto a disk, so I don't want to kill my laptop. So I edit on a external drive. So I'll have a project, which will have all the video files and stuff like that I want to put together. I'll put that in a folder and have that on an external drive. The problem with most external drives that you just go pick up a JB Hi-Fi for $100. You know, you buy a 2 terabyte drive. It's all great. It's going to be a 5400 RPM drive, so it's not going to be solid state. It's going to be 2.5 inch, so it doesn't read and write as fast as a powered one, a mains powered one, which is a 3.5 inch size drive. So you can put your stuff on there, but have you ever stuck one of those into the side of your computer and then tried to view something and it sort of stutters a little bit? It takes a little bit of time to get your video working once it's warmed up. Yes, that's better. That'll read faster. It's a bigger drive, 3.5 inch internal drive, so it'll read faster than one of those little ones.
Sorry, so just for the audio people. Holding up. No, it's all good. It's a Western Digital 6 terabyte unit that I talk about on my YouTube video with accessories. But you think this one's all right? You don't mind it?
I don't know if you'd get the throughput from the USB 3 to edit from it.
No, you don't.
You don't, yeah. So that's herein lies the problem. Most of your interfaces through a computer, a USB 3, which isn't fast enough to edit from generally, unless you're editing really low res stuff. I haven't tried proxying through a USB 3. You might be able to edit through that. That's something for you to try. So I have on the Macs, on my MacBook Pro, there's an interface called Thunderbolt 2, which I think is 4 times as fast as USB 3. So I can edit through that. So I have a little 1 terabyte drive that I put my active projects on. And then I edit through that because the throughput on the Thunderbolt 2 is definitely fast enough to do that. The newer version is Thunderbolt 3, which is now, I believe, owned by Intel, so it's open source, so you can get that on PCs as well. I think that's twice as fast as Thunderbolt 2, so I use that at work most of the time. All my edit drives, we have 10 edit drives for the different people, some sort of like 8 terabyte lacy drives, and we'll edit off those. And for my backups of storing all my projects, obviously 1 terabyte doesn't go that far, as you know. This day and age, I've got probably about 16 terabytes of mirrored footage. So I have 16 terabytes of footage, then I have that in another 16 terabytes. I separate the hard drives because I'm paranoid about losing footage. And you can just use like a cheap sort of, little drive you get from JB Hi-Fi for $50 or whatever, and keep your footage on that and just store it on that. So my procedure from the end of a dive is I'll dump all my footage onto my edit drive and categorize it how I want in my systematic folder structure that I mentioned over my email.
I want you to, can you go into it?
I can, and then I will offsite that onto my A and B storage drives, so they're mirrored. And then when I finish that project, all the project files and additional assets and that sort of stuff, I will dump on those as well. So I can go up and open that in a year's time. So the way I edit in a more professional way is we'll have a project, let's just call it Noob Spearo Podcast. Say for this video here, I'll dump all my rushes, which is just the industry term for your footage. Rushes, I'll categorize that into different camera types. So for me, generally I'll have Hero 4, Hero 7, drone, Panasonic, and then I will dump those into those folders there. And then I also have a folder called Assets, which I keep music tracks, graphics, logos, or any sort of additional stuff that's not footage. I'll dump in there. I'll have a folder called After Effects as well, where I keep all my After Effects projects if I do any compositing into that video. I also have a folder called SFX, so my sound effects, if I want to put a swish or a pop or a
probably with me you want to have like like for my dad jokes and that.
Yeah, all that sort of stuff. I stick in there. And what else do I have? I have one called Project Files. So that's where I save my project files and keep all my auto saves going to that folder. So it just keeps it very nice and structured, so I know where everything is at any one time. I can hand that to someone else. They know where everything else is. And it keeps it really organized. And at the end of the day, I can go, yep, cool. I know my rushes are backed up everywhere else, which is the important stuff. I can generally get my assets again. You can download your music tracks again. Your rushes are the important stuff that you're never going to get back if you lose them. So, you get footage of you having, like you say, big bull shark right up in your face. You lose that footage, can't get that back. So, I do get a bit paranoid about losing footage.
Mine's not losing footage, it's getting on the bottom and some cool shit happens and then I go, I forgot to turn my GoPro on. And, and then, there's that 3-second delay and that's forever when you're when something cool's happening. Yeah,
underwater it's a long time for sure, so that's what I do with editing. And then for Premiere Pro, you can drag those individual folders into your editing suite and they'll stay like that. So when I drag it in there, I'll have a folder in my project panel called Rushes, nice. and it'll have all listed by cameras. And the only other thing that when we talk about scratch discs is I believe that's like a term where your editing programs will make a preview file to preview the video back, because it's processor intensive just to keep playing videos back and forth when you're playing something back 50 times in a row to try and find the right spot to cut. So it creates preview files and they can get quite big. So it's in Premiere Pro it's known as your media cache, and that normally you set your scratch disk to where you want your media cache files to go. Actually, not your scratch disk, sorry. In your settings, you can set your media cache to where you want to go. And sometimes I've gone, why is my laptop full? Oh, I've got no storage, and I've got 100 gig of media cache files when you're doing that. And it just helps it edit better. So with Premiere Pro, it's really easy to find them because you can just go to your settings and designate the folder, and you can just empty them out after once I've done 6 months worth of editing, I clear all that out. So I've got more space. I run them on my the cache files on my SSD inside my computer because I want the best playback. So it just creates files to make things play back a bit smoother. If you know what I mean, sort of like unpacks it a little bit.
I get what you mean. So is that your RAM that's accessing? I don't want to get too technical.
I'm not too sure on what it does, but
Yeah,
you will
okay.
build files. What I found with Final Cut Pro is it made Apple ProRes files, which is a different codec, which is beautiful to edit. If you ever have files that come off a camera that's ProRes, you can edit 8K on your phone. It's just beautiful. It's delicious, but the files are massive because it's not as compressed. So the thing that slows your computer down is how compressed something is, because it's hard to unpack a box.
Unpacking that codec,
Yeah.
Okay.
So
It's something to get your head around too. Is just how computers compress files, or all technology does, and how they access them and unpack them. There's a little bit there to get your head around, like with the protocols they use and the timing and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
All right, cool. That's cool. So you've got all these files now. You're sitting in your editing suite. You've got your cache all nice and set up. So let's say you've got. Okay, so now you've got a video in front of you. You've got 20 minutes of raw footage that you think could be good. Like I've heard thinking like a director and not ever having longer than 10-second shots as a rule of thumb, although breaking rules is fun.
That was in the Spearheads podcast, I think. Never more than 10 seconds. Or I listened to that one, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, having these rules of thumb can be a good idea, because then when you break the rule intentionally, you're allowed to do that. But it's just a smart way to think about stuff.
It is, yeah. To keep audience engagement, I would tend to agree somewhat, not so hard and fast. Like some things are worth sort of, like sometimes if there's a long shot of something that's actually happening, that's great. So, you going down, for instance, in a video I did, my halibut video, there's a shot of me explaining what just happened, me frothing, got foam coming out the mouth, don't know what's going on. I've got 30 seconds of me explaining what's going on. That's relative to what you're doing. You don't need to cut that because you're trying to illustrate something or storytelling. Or something cool's happening on the bottom. If I do a more of a demonstrational type video where I'm going, cool, I'm breaking down a dive, someone's on the bottom, this is what they're doing on the bottom, they're doing this for this reason, there's this over here, there's this. I want to keep that in one continuous take to demonstrate a dive if you're trying to teach something. But for a general sort of story type telling, I don't need 30 seconds of a GoPro off the front of the bow of your boat. I get it after a couple of seconds.
You had a glazed look over your eyes there. That was an emotional moment for you. You were channeling something there.
I'm not trying to be harsh or high and mighty, and I know it probably for some people are probably thinking this guy's a bit of a dickhead in the way that he thinks, but I'm trying to come from a place of improvement of a way to get your point and your story across in a more eloquent way than in a more concise way, which I'm not particularly good at. Getting things in it, because vocally I'm horrible at trying to as you know from this podcast, I'm doing it right now as I think. This is really bad. I tend to go on tangents all the time. And if you want to be concise,
I think
it's quite difficult.
And I think people respond to it to an extent too, because sometimes it answers some of the underlying questions and peripheral stuff that they actually do want to know. So it's all good. And the storytelling aspect is super important, and there's a real craft to filmmaking. And most of us don't go to film school. I remember Snook Leonard talking to us back in the day. He was working with another dude who went through film school, but he was 100% garage. And but learning some of the rules that filmmakers use, like this 10-second shot thing, like this establishing shot thing, like these, and combining the footage and new, like the way you transition through shots. There's hundreds of these rules that you can learn about, and then when you understand them, then you can break them. But you've got to think about it from an audience perspective, which is hard.
Yeah, that is hard. I've cut shots that I think are really, really cool for me, but for the story they're not helpful in any way. I go, I'm just gonna have to bin that. I didn't go to film school at all. I have no formal training. I'm the most disqualified person in my workplace. Everyone else has got bachelors of creative arts, etc. And I'm the only person that's sort of gone to the University of YouTube, I guess, as I like to say. Just learnt everything online. There is certain things, those sort of hard and fast filmmaking rules, like a 180-degree rule on an interview or a 2-person setup. They're not that applicable to a spearfishing film because there's not a lot of dialogue scenes as such, if you know what I mean. There are some things that make things better than others, but also the other big underlying factor of the whole spearfishing film is they're very rarely scripted. You can have an intention to go out and go, cool, I want to go shoot this, or I want to go do this. Great. How often does that happen?
Never.
Not too often.
I remember Darren Shields is the same. He was shooting a segment for a fishing show in New Zealand, and he was saying the same thing. He was like, you go out and you think you're going to do a video about this, but then this happens, and then that's what the video's about. You know, and I mean, that's part of the dynamic nature of the sport that we love too, the unpredictability of it all.
For sure.
And so, our podcasts are seldom scripted. Turbo and I might have a list of bullet points when we do like a 101. And we'll work our way through it, but we try and just have a conversation with it. I think that's a bit more engaging too, to be honest.
Definitely.
Not all of us hate watching commercials and infomercials. They're these heavily scripted things where, they pull out and they micromanage all of your connecting words. The clumsy stuff's often the funniest stuff. And
I think
sometimes it takes 3 or 4 takes to nail it though. If you want to, put things out of the quality that you're doing. For sure.
I do have some big outtakes, particularly when I do like a sit-down environment when I'm trying to either recount a story or talk about something where I'm trying to go, hey, this is how to shoot a jobfish or something, where I'm trying to do more of an educational, give some value back. Those things for me, I will write those down and go, these are the points I want to make, and I will sort of glance over to my notepad, do my piece to camera and try to do it in one concise, eloquent take. And I'll do that. Sometimes I get stuck on some points that I'm trying to make because you realize how silly they sound, and until you don't realize how silly they sound until you actually say them out loud, and then you sort of rework your story. So for those style things where I'm doing a piece to camera, I tend to maybe think about them a lot more. But when I'm doing just an impromptu sort of thing where I went to Denmark, I go, cool, I'm going to go hear this bridge. I've going to try and do this, and you go do it. You don't know what's going to happen, etc. And I think that element of unknown is really what draws a lot of people to certain films. For instance, Brody Moss from YBS, he goes, let's go out, I'm going to take my jet ski out and strand myself out here with no food or anything for the next night and just see how we go. You don't know what's going to happen. He doesn't give it away in his title or his thumbnails, and I think that's a part of his success is doing things that people don't know the final result to. Whereas I've been guilty of it, where I'll do a video and I go scallop catch and cook. Obviously, he's going to get scallops. There's not a lot of mystery in what's going on. You know what I mean? So I think that it's a hard.
That's a personal style thing.
It is a personal style thing, and it's a hard balance to strike because you want to attract someone to your film that you want them to watch because, like you say, there's such a saturated market of people putting out content all the time in 2019, not just spearfishing, just fishing, everything outdoors related. There's such a saturation. What draws someone to something can also be a detriment to them actually wanting to watch it. You go, this is about this. Oh, I may not want to watch that. So man, I learn all the time. I just it's a hard sort of balance to make. But if you're just making things because you want to make things, just do it.
That's fun too. Yeah, like I talked to Trevor a bit, and he does Submerged Psychos, and I gently asked him for some hints with GoPro and stuff, and like he was just like shocked that I'd even ask him because he doesn't really
does not care
the technical side at all.
He just wants to go out there and kill some fish and maybe film it and he's happy doing that. He
likes communicating though and teaching, and some of his videos are so educational, but there's no finesse about some of the stuff he does.
Yeah.
But that's part of the delight of it, like he's just
100%.
himself.
That's that sort of personal thing, and that's one thing a lot of people say. I do get a lot of DMs from people on Instagram, particularly, where they say, "Oh, can you give me, look at my video and see what you think, or can you give me some feedback on my videos?" And for me, I think the biggest thing that I did to get more people engaged was show personality, that I was actually a person behind the gun and the camera, not just the end result of seeing a gun shoot a fish. I'm not saying I'm not claiming to be a pioneer and an expert, because I've just poached all my ideas from a lot of filmmaking YouTubers as well, and vloggers, like Casey Neistat, etc., like that. And yeah, I think that's just the way things are going popularity wise, that if you want to engage with an audience, like you say, with the infomercial versus a conversation, have a conversation with someone on the screen. Make people feel like they know you or something. That's probably one of the biggest things I would say for my style of videos that I've done that makes them somewhat popular, is to engage with people and give them some value as well, not just entertain people, but give them something to help them as well. Otherwise, you're just sort of making noise, really.
Well, I like the channel, man. I think you're doing a fantastic job. I was going to say you definitely need to start a Patreon, though. That would be my call. A Patreon can also serve people. You can have reward tiers. So maybe one of the tiers you have on your Patreon is like $10 a month or something, but it's like a Daniel Mann film school where you have like a Skype call with these guys that are $10 patrons once a month or once every couple of months.
Yeah.
And you just go through their films. You go through films together and you just go like, maybe this could be better. Here's a tip for this and this. Something like that. I think that could be a way that you could serve that group of people that clearly want some help with their films.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
Guys might be curious after listening to today's podcast or watching today's episode, how they can do that. So that'd be my little suggestion to you, buddy.
I'll take it on board.
Food for thought. It's just another thing, isn't it? It's another thing to do. But
I've just got that thing that I do on Monday to Friday that sort of gets in the way of that. What's that? Oh, the job.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know all about that. I've just started another one. So yeah. Which actually, funnily enough, I've got to go and do shortly.
Right.
So just wanted to wrap up quickly. Any sort of, like, we've gone through settings today for GoPro. We've talked in a roundabout way about filmmaking, the storytelling aspect.
Yep.
We got lost in the weeds with editing and tech setups.
We did.
Practical sort of no-nonsense tips for GoPro users, and we probably should have done this at the front end rather than the back end, but,
use the one button on mode or the rabbit mode on your GoPro. Never try and sort of turn it on and then press record, because you'll lose your head up your own ass about what the beeps and all that sort of stuff means. There's a setting in there, I think it's called like rabbit mode. You just press it on, it goes beep, 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 beep. It's recording. You press it again, it stops recording. That conserves your battery life. For the head straps, I saw that you mentioned this about head straps versus mask mounts. I've never used a mask mount because I'm very particular about the mask that I use, and I haven't found that manufacturer makes a GoPro mask mount. So I'm not really interested in trying it, because I think also going in caves and that sort of stuff, I think it could be quite a bit dangerous knocking your mask off at depth if you're sort of wrestling around or a fish knocks your GoPro as well. It's just another thing if you get your mask flooded at depth, for me, it's just not something I'm keen on doing.
I remember reading a Facebook rant about it like several years ago, and you were quite vocally against it. And but I learnt a lot, as you do, through reading these Facebook rants.
Oh dear!
Because you get all the perspectives. And no, I don't think you got egotistical about it. You were quite well behaved. You were probably in your mid-20s by then. But like a lot of these debates end up that way. I've had several conversations lately about this, like just being a dick online. But no, you weren't a dick. You had some good points. So
if you can communicate your point and why you think somewhere, great. If someone can create a counter argument why something else is great. You don't have to agree with it, but you don't have to attack someone. You go, I don't think that's a good idea because of X, Y, Z. Brilliant. I think this is a better idea because of ABC. Cool.
Yep.
as long as you say something, the reason why you don't like somebody's argument, instead of just saying you're a dickhead and I hate your perspective. Well, why do you? I know. Anyway, we digress yet again.
But it's a good digression. But so okay, so that's cool. So that's your 10 cents on masks and the GoPro mount. That's kind of a guy asked me on my YouTube video actually about it, and I sort of said the same thing. But yeah,
I use the head strap and I use it over the top of the hood, contrary to your recommendation.
Why?
Well, in Europe the water's quite cold, so having
seepage.
Seepage, it's very uncomfortable having a plastic bit straight on your head. If you've ever worn a 9.5mm wetsuit, you will know that it's not the most. It's comfortable, but it's quite rigid, and so you notice it chewing in the boat. If you're eating something that's chewy, you will notice that your jaw gets sore from having a 9.5mm wetsuit hood on you. So having that under there, it's just not really an option. I lost a GoPro once. I'd shot a 13.65 kilo Red Emperor and then lost the footage because it fell off my head later in the day. Bryson helped me with a Red Emperor. It was assisted catch for all those sticklers at home.
If it wasn't on video, it didn't happen.
It didn't happen, apparently, because I lost my GoPro. And then I bought a new GoPro. A month later, I went to the Sunshine Coast off a pinnacle out there, and I've got footage of Tim filming me lose my GoPro off my head. I've got the screen grab of it falling off my head. And he got back to the boat and he said, "Oh yeah, ever since you lost your last GoPro, I've been doing this thing where you get the head strap and you take it and you snorkel over the top of it on your head strap. So if it falls off, it just stays attached to your mask and never comes off." I did a video about this on YouTube a couple of years ago.
Clever.
Tim, it's probably one of the only good bits of advice that bloke could give me. No, I'm just kidding. He's got a few good bits of advice, but yeah, it just solved all the problems because you can stick it on your head real quick, and if you want to get it off to film something in the boat, you're never gonna undo the screw. If you've got it under your hood and that sort of stuff, and it's far more comfortable. And I've touch wood, I have not lost a GoPro since using the tuck under the snorkel method, unless you get you're in the wash and your whole mask comes off, and if your whole mask comes off in the wash, you're having a bad day anyway.
Yeah, nah, cool. Okay, I'm going to try that. I was out the other day. I've just ordered a new wetsuit yesterday. I bought a new 9-pin suit from a guy down in Melbourne who gets them made down there. Cool suits. But I've been out. I've got two. Like, I gave a full kit of equipment to my little brother in New Zealand, and when I came back and started diving again, I was using all my second stuff. And so I've got an old 3mm bottom and an old 3mm top, which are both like 1.5mm now, but there's holes all through it as well. Yeah. I've been freezing, and I normally never get cold. It's at 22 degrees or 20 degrees, I think, just out the front now, and so it is a little bit cooler. Yeah, for you now, but I was cold, and the GoPro didn't help. So that's a cool tip. Do you do the thumbs up, thumbs down thing at the end of your GoPro takes?
That Tucker and Jesse Cripps suggested in their podcast. See, I do listen and take all these things on board. I don't do that. I tend not to rename my clips or anything like that because I find it easier to remember a day in sequential order about how things happen. So the GoPro, obviously, when you bring into the editing suite, it'll list things by numerical order, and your GoPro names your clips in numerical order. And I think if I spend an hour renaming my clips, that's an hour I could have got a first assemble of the rough story out by just going through those clips in a sequential order. So for me, it's sort of doubling up on time. So I don't. I try to remember what I've done. I used to in the past, like, name things, but then I ended up, you search your hard drive and I've got 10 different shots that say mackerel shot or something else like that, or parrot stone, or tusky good, or something. You have all this stuff that sounds the same and you can't differentiate it.
Spiro grunt talk.
Yeah, all that sort of stuff.
Tusky good. Parrot stone. Yeah,
tusky good. And then in the case of Tim's stuff, whenever you search his, it's really hard because he's not one for caring about his spelling. So you get Spanish without the I in it. So you're searching for Spanish mackerel footage. Spanish. It's Australian speak, mate. Spanish.
Yeah, Australian. Levi's famous for Creoles.
Been pulled up about crays. I've been pulled up on crays versus lobsters on my recent videos. People tell me they're not lobsters, they're crays. And I Googled it, and apparently crayfish pertains to freshwater and lobsters pertains to saltwater. And interestingly enough, New South Wales Fisheries does not list crayfish anywhere on their saltwater bag limits. They're all rock lobsters. Fun, useless fact. For cray holes. They're lobster holes.
Well, wouldn't it be great if we could get some consistency with like fish names and, you know, shit like that from one end of the world to the other? Because now that we all hang out with each other, you know, because of this global world we live in, we need some consistency with naming and stuff. Like Spanish mackerel, you know, like it's called king mackerel and kingfish and
a kuta in South Africa. It's called a kuta.
Yeah, it's terrible, you know. Like it'd be good if we could just agree on one and go, righto guys, let's rock this. Even though they might
snapper. Snapper's the worst name in the world for a fish.
Yeah.
Everything's a snapper. Everything's a bass as well. You know, red bass, striped bass, European bass, largemouth bass. Just everything's called a bass. Everything's called a snapper.
Yeah, Levi gets good with the technical names because he's got a degree in natural science. So he'll give me some, it's Lujanus, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, yeah, righto, man.
So like a Lujanus malabaracus, a saddle-tailed sea perch, Lujanus sabe, a red emperor, Lujanus johnny, a finger
look
mark.
at you. Look at you.
Platycephalus fuscus, a dusky flathead, etc. All that sort of crap.
How did you learn fish names?
My old man used to do a lot of fishing on the reef. My old man used to do a lot of fishing on the reef, and we just used to read Grant's guides to fishers and go, oh, what did Daddy shoot? What did Daddy catch? And so we'd just pour over the books, I guess, and go, oh, you caught, oh, it looks like this, and you just, I guess from a young age, sort of 4 or 5 years old or something, just started trying to look in the old Grant's guide to fishers, and
yeah, great, good book, eh?
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
An absolute cracker.
Yeah.
Levi's got our copy, I think, so I have to get that back off him. Because my technical knowledge of you know species names is absolutely woeful. I need to get organised.
You did mention this recently on one of your podcasts that you found it quite difficult to. Actually, it was the podcast with Trevor. You mentioned that coming from New Zealand, learning fish species in Australia isn't just something you know off. You just don't know those things. You have to learn those things. And I sort of thought about it the other day, thinking, man, I think Australia of all places is one of the toughest places to learn fish species, because here in the UK I've got 10 fish that you'd shoot, and there's a few things that look kind of similar. Mediterranean, you've got 4 gropers, a couple different types of dentex, some sea bream, and that's about it. Not really it's quite really difficult actually in Australia to learn fish species.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, like watching some of your vids back in the day, SDM, you know, like I used to live off that thing, the DVDs, and part of the thing I got out of it was just pattern recognition, you know, like when you see the GoPro footage of a fish, you actually really see, looking at a fish in a book is a poor substitute for seeing that fish in the water.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
The colours change or you lose all colour. So you've got to learn to recognise not even just silhouette and the features that stick out, but the way the fish moves. You know, like coral trout, when you start seeing coral trout, you know coral trout, you know. Yeah. Unless you're quite far away, the only thing you might confuse them with is maybe a wong. But the way their body moves, it's, you know, very distinctive. All fish are kind of the same, and you recognise the way they move, and bang, your eyes tuned into it.
Maybe we should do a collaborative video for the noobers, as you call them, on basic species in Australia or something. We could do a video and go, this is what they look like underwater or something like that. That could be. Now we're talking. That could actually be a very useful resource for the audience,
100%.
Because you're getting 100%. Out now with your GoPros and go, this is what XYZ looks like. Could be quite helpful.
Or we could make a joke video, and I could say like, this is what a green jobfish looks like, and I'll hold up like a 1.5 kilo model and show my stalk, and then you could hold up like a 9 kilo one, and then you could, you know, say like, this is what a real one looks like, or something like that. That'd be good.
We don't need to get a dick swinging contest about that. But
no, I don't mind. We could have fun with it. It'd be good.
We could, yeah. I think that'd be worthwhile actually.
Yeah,
leave
cool.
it at. Do you get people that comment on podcasts? Is there a comment section on the podcast? Can they comment?
Yeah, it'll be on. No, not really. No.
Well, send Shrek an email if you want us to make that video, and we'll do it.
Yeah, Shrek@noobspearo.com or Yep, that'll do. And then I'll liaise up with you, and we've got some videos to happen in the future, I'm sure. But all good, Dan. I'm going to head off to work, and but absolute pleasure chatting with you, and more to do in the future.
Definitely. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.